GenAI is already affecting the labor market. They've correlated the launch of ChatGPT to automation-prone jobs and how it is significantly dropped just because of the automation of things. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Autonomous Income, where we tell y'all all about the news of tech and entrepreneurship. We cross those lines. I'm your co-host, Deuce Noble.
And I'm your co-host, DJ. What's going on today, Deuce?
Hey, man, as always, like I said, we got a couple things in the news. We're going to do a news update, news roundup for today. So, DJ, let's go ahead and start unpacking what you got for us today.
Man, on my side, we have a lot. There's, as you guys may know, Grok 3, came on the scene and caused a bunch of waves. There's a bunch of tests and some benchmarks news that came out. So we'll kind of be unpacking that a little bit. Microsoft announced their Muse, which is like generative assets for like gameplay and whatnot. And, so that also made some waves a little bit. Just a lot of tech roundup that we want to do to kind of cap the week off with everything that happened this week in tech, because it's fast moving.
Right. Absolutely. And you know what? There's also a couple of things I want to touch on. One thing, I don't know if some of our listeners have heard of or used Fiverr, avid Fiverr user in the past. I've used it for a couple of things, but Fiverr has announced some AI tools that'll help their freelancers train models on their work. And so they can monetize their own AI generated content. So we're going to kind of dive into that a little bit and see what that looks like, because I think that's actually pretty cool as far as, AI generated stuff goes. Like that's actually a pretty cool use case, right? All right, so let's go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, so I guess what we'll kick off talking about Grok 3. If you had a chance to play around with it yet, if you're X, I always want to say Twitter, but if you're an X, I think pro user or whatever their paid service account is, you'll have access to a model where you can go in there and kind of play around with it. But essentially, this model is really solid. I mean, it is definitely solid. What I've seen with the test, you can go to Matthew Berman's account. I'll link his page below. He tested the model out. It sounds like this is really equivalent to O1, so ChatGPT's O1 model. So we know that the O3 Mini model is out available. So they have the different levels like O3 Mini, low, medium, and high, basically with the competency, but the big O3 model isn't out quite yet. So when they say Grok 3 is the most powerful model that's out, I think it's really because it's saying like what's technically out today in that sense. And it's like equivalency to O1 as far as for competency and like the benchmarks that it has together. So either way, I would definitely say you can play around with the model. Grok models are particularly known because they're a lot more open, like uncensored. You can really play around with these models and ask them a lot of, questions that you can't really ask the other models because of how filtered, how censored that they are. So, if he says, hey, write a poem and, use curse words or whatever the case is, like something along those lines, like, Grok will really, this is Elon in XAI, this is coming from their shops. It's definitely a lot more uncensored. And, from their perspective, they like, their models just to be like, as, truthful or just, as honest, from their perspective as possible, I think is where their takes on it. But what do you think? You played around with any of the Grok models?
Man, I have not played out around Grok just yet, but I definitely want to compare it to some of the models that have been out and that are out. And I think, like you said, it's coming from Elon Musk, his shop of, unusual things. So I know it's one of those, like, you're going to be able to put anything up there. So I'm definitely interested in trying out. But, I think it is coming to one of those things where we're getting to the point where everyone's going to have their own model come out and it's going to be compared to all the certain benchmarks that every other model is out here. But I want to really see, like, hey, what's the difference? Like, what makes this model so much better or special, right? And offering it on the different platforms has really been the key so far, right? So if you're, like you said, a X, formerly known as Twitter, a pro user, I believe is what their paid subscription model is, then you have the privileges of using that, and so on and so forth for the models for the different companies like OpenAI's less than pro users, and then the other ones that out there as well. So I think that it'll just be really interesting to see which model out here kind of takes the cake as far as, or takes the big chunk of the market we have. That's really what's going to drive things. But Elon got a lot of push behind him, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, they were super aggressive on how long it took to train this model and everything like that. They cut down on a lot of time and they caught up because essentially, like, XAI started later. And of course, we know OpenAI, I think they're still in the lead if you want to put it against all the races. But ever since DeepSeek, and now with XAI, there's really good competition. And we can't leave out Gemini. A lot of people leave out Gemini, but for past couple of weeks, they were leading the LLM arena, which basically had all the models basically competing against each other with real individuals. It's basically like a blind test. You go in there, you give it a prompt, and it'll have one response and another response, and you kind of vote on which one you prefer. And for the past couple of weeks, it was those Gemini models that I mentioned before last week. So those were all winning. But then as of now, it's actually Grok that's at the top of that list across like all the boards on there, which is good. And they had it nicknamed Chocolate for whatever reason. They had it nicknamed Chocolate, but essentially that is the one that's at the top of the LLM arena as it is today. So
Hey man, like I said, it's going to be one of the things that it's going to be an ebb and flow of who's really at the top, depending on the week, right? Depending on those models, but there's always going to be something new on the forefront and on that horizon. But I'm really interested to see which model kind of takes a cake and starts to really pull away from the pack. And like you said, right now, I think OpenAI has such a strong lead that they're sitting comfortably, but you never know, someone can really close that gap, right? I think, we're talking about these models like it's a horse race or something, but essentially kind of that's what it is, right? We're in this age of technology where this is the AI arms race, essentially, right? You said DeepSeek out of China and other companies, Alibaba has their own model. Like other countries are really getting involved. I think recently I believe France as a country, I don't know, the prime minister, is it the prime minister of France? I don't know what their leader is called, but he is investing, a couple billion into AI innovation for the country itself. So I think, as we say, this is an AI arms race, and it would be really interesting to see which model kind of pulls away from that pack, whether it's over here in the US or wherever it is. So I'm interested to see how that all shakes out.
yeah, France, they have a Mistral. I think it's Mistral is their model. That's out of France, and that's a super competent. And I'm not sure if that's the one that he's investing in, or because I just know they've already released some
Yeah, I don't know if it was a specific one. I think it was more so just overall for the country, just innovation for NAI, investing into that market for them. And it's plausible as far as doing something like that, right?
Yeah, like you said, every week it's something, and it's hard. To keep track of because there's a lot of benchmarks that are out there, and of course, those only say so much. There's benchmarks, but it's like sometimes also you kind of prefer different models. Like for me, like at first, I was all about ChatGPT, like their model, like OpenAI's models, basically, and then I started to use Google, and then now I'm using like Perplexity, and Perplexity, I know they have like some Sonar that they've worked on, which is kind of like their hybrid stuff that they've been using based off of some of the open source models that are available. But really, you just got to kind of play around with all of them. I mean, you can't leave out Claude. Like, I think Claude, they're going to release their 4.0 model or whatever they're going to release. Like, I think they're going to have that. I'm sure that's going to coincide like with some agent use cases as well. Like these other models are starting doing that. Oh, and Grok, going back to Grok, Grok did enable deep research. So remember we talked about deep research last
Yeah,
week.
deep research.
So
There's been a
every
few that
model
have,
now, so Perplexity has deep
every
research.
model has a deep research.
Yeah, so we will be comparing those. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
We'll
And
compare.
if you're interested in we'll definitely link below where to compare some of those models and just to see leaderboard and everything. If you guys want to nerd out and, try a couple different models out, see who's up there, we'll add the link up there for your own personal research. That way you can, stay up to date with that as well. We're just here to provide all the updates that we can. But yeah, DJ, so what else we got on the docket? What else you got for us?
Yeah, so just like I was saying before, Microsoft they announced
Microsoft, their
their
Muse.
Muse is what they're calling it. Their research and Microsoft Research and the Xbox Game Studio Ninja Theory, basically they partnered together to create that new AI model for gaming. And they kind of showed it off, like some of the capabilities and what it looked like. And it seemed like, it would be pretty good. But then people got on X and, I think people in the game development community, and some of them were kind of worried about like how it may impact jobs or it may just hinder, creativity possibly. I'm not directly in that vein, but I mean, like that was some of the kind of comments that came out of that. So it'll be interested to see how that unfolds. But have you seen anything about Muse?
Man, Muse is definitely something that I think is going to change the game. Like, pun intended as far as far as that, but like it's really going to be interesting like how gameplay is, right? The thing that I'm excited about seeing what Muse can do is how it's really going to affect the esports community, right? The esports has really taken off for the last 4 or 5 years, and I think that this is going to be a welcomed addition to gaming in a sense of how to navigate and do different things with your games, right? It'd also be interesting to see what's allowed and what's not allowed in those type of arenas. So I think Muse is actually going to be pretty cool. I think we'll definitely see the next generation of consoles with this implemented in it as well. And not just in Microsoft, but when Sony drops their new console, their Nintendo, and then of course obviously Microsoft and whoever else wants to come into that arena.
Yeah, so I mean, the cool thing about Muse is like it can generate game environments based on the visual. So this like gives them game developers like creativity to like if they're in the developing a game or whatever, if they're testing the theory out. Apparently, they can like generate something versus like having to like actually develop program it into the game. They can basically prompt it, and basically it'll take a lot of the art style and a lot of like what you can kind of see here is they can maybe prompt in what would it look like if a jet was in the game or another game asset or whatever the case is like entered into the game. So from a development standpoint, it's going to be super interesting. And I think that's where some of the spice came in, is because people that they develop game environments, they're just like, oh, well, is this going to impact us? Because this is what we do. Like we develop, I mean, like they're basically in the vein of
You
doing game
know,
development. Yeah.
I think this just goes along with some of the things that we've talked about in the past, DJ. This is something that where it's like, yes, it may affect, game developers in that sense, but it's one of the things you have to work with it, right? You have to use it to aid in your game development. And I think we can't ignore a lot of this Gen AI stuff that's coming out that's going to, not necessarily take jobs, but can ultimately act as an assist in these jobs, right? Because I don't think game developers are going anywhere anytime soon, but it's definitely something that you're going to have to use in addition to your other tools, right? You got to think about like tools like what people are doing with Photoshop now. A lot of graphic designers are frustrated in the sense of like, hey man, I gotta learn how to use a new tool now with generative stuff. Now game developers are in that same boat, right? And I think it's going to really show how companies and developers in themselves can really adapt to this technology, right? Everything's a change going forward, and the adaptability is really going to determine how you shift and move with these changes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Whole point is we definitely just want to keep you on the radar of all the things that are kind of coming out and hitting the scene. This was just, they've talked about it before, but they kind of just showed it. Of course, the pixel count was very small when they originally had it, and they've been not upscaling, but basically increasing that pixel count like to where, to expand a little bit more so you can get more creative. It's still kind of choppy, as you can kind of see from the video, but this is the worst. Like everybody says, this is the worst this technology will ever be. For one, I think it will open up. I think it would open up creativity, right, for you to do that. Hopefully it won't impact, anybody's jobs or anything like that as it is right now. Who knows? I mean, just a lot of this is just anticipated to shake up the job market in general, but I can see why the game designers are kind of, they probably just don't know where to place it either, because like, if they start doing things like this and, if you're a game designer, just it's like, hey, well, this is kind of in my lane type of thing, but we'll see how that unfolds. But basically that's the latest with that. All right, Deuce, what do you have with
No, so I mean, well, speaking of, job security, essentially, right? Gen AI, that is definitely a great transition point, because one of the things I want to talk about, if you've heard of Fiverr, I've used Fiverr for a lot of my freelance stuff to hire freelancers and everything. Fiverr has introduced new AI tools that allows freelancers to train models on their own work, right? And monetize from that AI generated content, which in essence will give them, apparently allowing the gig workers to retain ownership of those AI generated assets, which brings an interesting point to these AI generated assets, because I remember we've talked about it before, DJ, about how, hey, these AI generated assets have the same copyright laws and the same IP laws, intellectual property laws that, regular, artwork or drawings or whatever you do, from a creation standpoint. Do they honor, I guess, lawyers, and will they be recognized with the same IP, intellectual property, right? But apparently Fiverr has figured that out. If you use Fiverr, if you're a consumer, or if you're on Fiverr as a freelancer, they now offer AI generated tools. The personal AI creation model costs $25 monthly. So it's pretty cool. I definitely think I might check it out. I've been on Fiverr as a consumer. I may do some freelance work on there as well. But it brings to that point, right? How often these jobs are going to be affected. Because now, the gig market has been hit pretty hard with things like that. Whether we're talking about those game developers, but in the advent of cheap, widely available generative AI tech, a lot of the competition for certain roles and jobs have been affected. Like writers, programmers, app developers, they're really seeing a lot of negative effects with some of the Gen AI stuff. And I think that's pretty interesting just to see how that really can affect someone's job. But like I said, this is something that you're going to have to live and adapt with. And I think over time, I think Fiverr is kind of doing it right in a sense where it's like, hey, we're offering tools where you can monetize this AI created content. It'll save you a lot more work, for a small fee. And you also get the rights to that, right? I don't know. What do you think about that, DJ?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. When you were mentioning it, I have used Fiverr in the past, and I would imagine because what I've used Fiverr for in the past is like logo design or
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's really it was mainly like logos, some graphic design and stuff like that. And then I started like years ago, like I got to start using different models and everything like that for my own graphics and logos and things like that. And I haven't looked back since. So I would imagine that market just alone, has been impacted. So this is cool that they're giving them, on the platform of Fiverr, that they're giving them tools that they can kind of use and leverage as freelancers on there. So I'm definitely interested to see how that would pan out, because I know also as we get into like AI agents and those capabilities, like a lot of that I would imagine with Fiverr and Upwork and all these other things, if you have AI agents that are capable of doing these things and they have their own types of tools, it'll be interesting in how that works. And then going back to when you were talking about like with what they create, and I think there was some recent legislation that they talking about AI and copyright and all of those things. Actually, I think we can bring somebody onto the show that'd be good to kind of talk through those things, because a couple friends of mine that have really dug into that just to kind of look at like the new legislations that have been came out recently, essentially,
Mhm.
and just to kind of cover that and just to kind of talk through it, because I for one am not as familiar with what's legally been
Been approved
yeah, you're gonna
or
have to cut
not.
that. I'm like, blah. All right.
Say blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
Honestly,
we can start
um,
opening. Yeah.
so I think that the impact a lot of these Gen AI has on the job market is really starting to affect, right? There's a study out there that shows Gen AI is already affecting the labor market. They've compared the launch, or they've correlated, I would say, the launch of ChatGPT to automation prone jobs versus manually intensive jobs and how it is significantly dropped. I can share that data. VR has did an extensive study on this, just showing how, I don't know if it's a real correlation or not, but that has significantly dropped just because of the automation of things. But like I said, this is a market now. We're in the era where using these tools to aid you in your work is going to benefit you, especially as an entrepreneur, small business owner, even a big business owner, right? You want to find tools that's going to aid in helping you, whether it's the agentic AI tools or just regular Gen AI, where you're using some stuff to, hey, I create a few things or maybe write a few proposals for me, depending on what your line of work is, right? If you're in real estate, I can write a couple of contracts. I can get some agentic agents to make a few calls and send a few emails for me, right? It's stuff like that that's really going to help you with your business, right? And I think that, we're in a new era, and it's interesting to see how a lot of that really going to affect certain things. There's been a lot of layoffs happening in a lot of different industries, and it's actually, a little scary, but also, it's time, it's either you're going to grab life by the horns and take this on, or you're just going to, sit and watch.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see how that unfolds. Yeah, I'm interested, as you can kind of see within the article. Like it's just saying basically the model. I mean, it gets into what you were saying before about like how they have control to kind of fine tune their model essentially based off the works that they had. So it kind of customizes it to their work, which is pretty cool. And then also conversely, they can use the in-house AI that Fiverr's working on as like a personal assistant, to guys analyze, like to help them out with client communication. So if you've communicated with clients over time, it can learn like your communication style, and it'll have like a little chat inference that it can have, or a chat instance that it can have between potential clients or whatnot, just to kind of help with that. So that's pretty cool. It'll be interesting to check those things out.
But yeah, again, the job market is going to ebb and flow as always. And I think now is more important than ever to be, not necessarily be, but to focus on being an entrepreneur and small business owner, but using these tools. I know we kind of, not to beat a dead horse, we are always talking about, hey, using these to aid in your business, and so what we're just trying to do is really just bring to light different avenues and different aspects to do that, right? And I think that this is really the time now to kind of take advantage of these opportunities out there. But as always, we're here just to learn with you and help you grow. and grow ourselves.
Yeah, there's definitely waves of this happening. And, even the Salesforce CEO, remember he said, like, for the rest of this year, I believe they said they weren't going to be hiring any more software developers or something along those lines. And I don't want to misquote it. You can Google it or Perplexity it or whichever tool you want, ChatGPT search or whatever the case. You can look it up. But yeah, I think he said something along the lines of like not hiring any more software engineers for
Yeah,
2025 just because they felt like what they have because a lot of these platforms they're an extension, you know what I mean, of what you can do. So now you can accomplish more, you know what I mean. So like just you may not need to, I guess is what they're a lot of the CEOs are looking at, is they may not need to keep hiring a lot of individuals because now individuals can do more. But we'll see as it unfolds because some people double down on saying, no, this will create more jobs. It just, is going to change what the jobs look like. It's definitely unfolding. But I can say that, we've been working in the space of AI. We've been working in this space prior to Pandeezy, prior to a lot of the hype with the LLMs and everything like that.
the
Back
panorama.
yeah, yeah. I mean, with traditional models and things like that on digital experiences that were consumer facing, and like it's definitely grown. And like now, you go on these different platforms and everybody's an expert or everybody's saying, oh, this and that. And like, and some people are legit like experts in their field, but it just seems like this. It's just so popular now that everybody has, kind of opinions on where it's going and what it can do and all those things and a lot of unknowns. Definitely, yeah. As entrepreneurs, like Deuce was saying, like you want to for sure look at how you can leverage these tools and integrate those into your business and into your personal workflows because it will save you time and that'll really help you scale and focus on the things that you hold important with your business and to kind of focus on those things. So automations, and things like you can just really save as much time as possible. That'll kind of help out and then keep the important things like those business relationships and, business development discussions and all that, things that, you can kind of handle to, help scale your business. But yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And as always, man, it's one of the things that we're here learning with you, like you said, helping you guys find navigate these trenches, the AI trenches over here, right?
sure.
But as always, look, if any questions, anything you guys want to know, look, shoot us a message, leave it, drop something in the comments. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and share, and we'll catch y'all on the next one.
Peace.